somebody doing absolutely nothing.
Very good.
It's 3:25. Wherever you are in Texas, be sure to give me a call as quick as you can. I really need to hear more time.
You guys are good friends.
Oh, yes. I think I'm gonna win all these. When did you get that?
Yeah,
That's a good tool.
it is a good tool.
It's dangerous.
He is dangerous.
Yeah.
Never know what he's gonna do with that.
What do you can't even handle his own?
What do you call these things?
Yeah, I got a joke over your hand. That's not the time to they should be reading. You should be reading about the two pins that one have a thing with your president. All right. I should have said it to you. Huh? The hell you say? No, I don't ever say that. Okay.
He's noticing.
Oh, look at that! Nice. It's a good look for you, Bob.
He needed more ruddy lips.
You need to see your dad.
Oh, that would probably scare me.
And this is his new play toy.
I got a bigger one than you got. Oh, it's a fight.
It's bigger than yours.
Yes.
That's what you've been saying all along.
So what is it like without your teeth in there?
Naked.
Like Red Skelton.
Okay, so today we're going to make a craft with Bob.
So, I have my hole puncher, which is in the shape of a heart, because we are the Love Airline.
It's nice of you.
That I kind of punch these in the right spot.
That's part of the crown, the pretzels.
Yeah.
This should be interesting.
Here. To keep the integrity of
The bag
crown,
or the crown.
I don't want salt and carrots there.
That's-
If I was making one, I would have done a pretzel, so it would have been better.
He would do anything for Jess. He threw something at your back. I think it's food fight.
You think it's all things that we need. Behind my back. You're doing that, bro. Yeah, that's the old thing. Now we got you out of bed. Try to behave yourself.
He's gonna start going outside every day to get vitamin A and D. You need to make him do it.
I don't believe we can do anything.
Yeah.
Oh. See that shirt? You got some cheese all over your shirt. And your mouth. Is this Ray? Or is that Ray? That's Ray. You just smeared Ray with cheese.
Ray got smeared, Ray. Couldn't have it to a nice shirt. She won't kill.
Oh my goodness! Hey, wait, your oxygen. Wait. Not a good idea.
You still have the beer from last night?
Yeah.
The beer? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we need.
I remember when I had my first beer in a wheelchair.
I'll see you on the floor. Gotta go
Okay.
on the job.
You do? I didn't know
Oh, it
that.
makes his day.
Really? Okay, that hurts our ears sometimes. You don't say.
So cute. Oh.
Oh, how precious.
When we got kisses, that's a big deal for her. We don't get kisses till she's known you a while. Little coquette.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Many more. That's your age, right? You remember Lincoln's age.
I'd also like to share a story from Louis, who has been a dear friend of Bob. He said, I have known Bob for about 20 years. We first met here at Pepsi. He and Doe used to sit behind Katie and myself in church, and we would talk back and forth for several weeks in a row. Finally, Katie got tired of having to turn around all the time and told him, get up here and sit with us. I can hear her right now. And I have never been able to get rid of him since. Every Sunday after church, we'd go to the Main Street Hotel in Castle Rock for their famous fried chicken, which was Doe's favorite food. Bob told me he wanted to live in Parker. The following week, Katie and I drove through Butterfield and picked up a flyer on a house that was for sale. I gave Bob the flyer at church, and 2 days later, he called me and told me that he and Doe would be our new neighbors. Bob and I shared an interest in cars. At one time, Bob owned 20 cars. I would see him with a different car every Sunday. And I said, you know what that. We would go to car shows together, and I think he's the reason I can barely get out of a car lot without buying something. My problem, though, is I only have a 2-car garage. In the meantime, Katie and I had moved to Heritage Eagle Bend, and it wasn't very long afterward that Bob moved there as well. So with both of us being widowers and single, we did a lot of things together, going to ball games and Sunday morning Bible study. My most favorite memory of Bob is his humor. Even toward the end, when he was feeling bad, he would be able to tell a joke at the drop of a hat.
Yep.
How many of you heard one of Bob's jokes? You're going to have a chance right now. You might be able to share that in a minute. Maybe there's a story. Randy did tell a story about his dad getting him started in the business. He says, I need to teach you how to run a business. And he says, so you go out there and you mow yards, and you charge $3. $1 goes to me. You know, I'm setting you up on this. $1 goes to you, and the other $1 goes to the maintenance fund to take care of the lawnmower and any supplies that we need to keep this business going. And if I'm not mistaken, you say 8 years to use that lawnmower or something? It was about 8 years. Yeah, nothing ever went wrong with it, know, Randy took good care of it, and Randy's still a little, he wonders where's that maintenance fund? Okay? He built a lot of lawns, right? And so there's somewhere out there, there's a fund that's
I asked him, Dad, you remember the box we put the flower in? And he said, yeah, I remember that. I said, well, who's got it? And he looked at me and I had to put my ear down and he said, Louie.
okay, Louie, that's how you bought that Cadillac. Okay, now we know the secret.
You know, if you knew Bob at all, you knew that he was not a mild-mannered man. You know, I mean, when he walked into a room, you knew he was there. Like Gary said, he didn't mind saying what was on his mind. I like that. He had strong opinions and feelings. I didn't have to wonder what was important to him. He let me know. People were important to Bob. And especially his family. It's funny to see his family who they know little about me, but I know lots about them. Because I've heard stories, of course, about his beloved wife, but about his kids and his grandkids for years and years. But even beyond family, Bob forged strong connections with people. I think there are two reasons that Bob had really strong relationships. One, Bob was an encourager. I remember a time when Bob sat me down and said to me very seriously, wagging a finger at me, and he said, Kathleen, in case you don't realize it, what you do in your ministry really makes a difference. He said, maybe nobody's ever told you that, but I want you to know that. And just sweet. I mean, he didn't have to tell me that. He said, I remember your words and you've helped me. He tried to, this is not just once. This is many times he would say little things about how, I'm brightening his day or things like that to encourage me. I'm supposed to be going to encourage him, but he would always turn it around like that. Yeah. Not only does he encourage people, but he also engaged them. He asked questions about me, which might not sound unusual to you, but as a chaplain, I go in to visit with people to listen to them, to hear their stories, to let them go on and on about whatever's on their heart. And but Bob would say, enough about me. Tell me about your life. How was your vacation? How's your family? How's your love life? He didn't allow my visits to just be one-sided. He wanted to know how I'm doing. Bob and I also had wonderful conversations about his faith. He would tell me about what he was studying in his men's Bible study and ask my opinion about various spiritual issues. One of the last conversations we had, a big spiritual conversation we had, was his question of, do animals go to heaven? It was important to him because if you knew him, you probably knew Missy. And he loved that dog. Yeah. And he wanted to know, is my dog in heaven? Am I going to see my dog again? And he was all excited because earlier this summer, well, I don't know exactly when the event happened, but he had a near-death experience where we almost lost him. And he was all excited. I went to see him after he rallied, and he said, you're not going to believe this. He said, I sort of was in between that life and death, in between life and death. He said, I saw a light. He said, and then I heard something. He said, I heard my dog bark. And he said, and I turned around and I started to say, Missy, and then I was awake. And he said, I think my dog is up there. Yep. So that made me happy for him. That comforted him. And I actually think, I agreed with him. I think that my pets are going to be up there also. But just a theory, you don't have to buy it. But it helped Bob at that time. So we would talk about almost anything. He wasn't shy about bringing up. I didn't have to drag things out of him. He would sit down and dive in. He always had something ready to go. He would also talk to me about his pain, the chronic pain in his back, and the pain in his heart because of how much he missed his wife. Many times I heard him retell the story of the day that his wife passed away, and he would just go on. And he said, "I'm so glad you got to know Doe a little bit." And he talked about other losses: the loss of his independence, the loss of his home, the loss of the ability to swim, and other joys that he had in life, his cars. He was longing to go to heaven. And many times he asked me to pray that the Lord would come for him. And his bags were packed. He was ready to leave this earth. He was a planner, and he felt like he had planned everything. He was ready, and what is God waiting for? In fact, he would get impatient and irritable about it. He'd say, "Come on, why is God still having me around?" And it made me think of King David's words in Psalm 13 when King David wrote, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me?" And Bob had a little bit of that, even though he was intentionally positive and grateful. But there was an undercurrent of this how long. Eventually, though, after we'd have a talk, he would circle back around to his favorite prayer. His favorite prayer, maybe you don't know it, but it was a prayer of submission and surrender. And sometimes if he was sort of on his rabbit trail of, why am I still here and what am I would say, "Hey Bob, remind me again of that favorite prayer of yours." And he would say it, and he'd smile. He liked it, because it's short and to the point. And his favorite prayer, if you don't know it, goes like this: "Your will, Lord, nothing more, nothing less, nothing else."
For those that went through the cancer era with Bob, ever since that episode, he was always dying. I hear the laugh. Bob was always dying. And so for the last 30 years that I knew him, he was always dying. And on the anniversary of the doctor telling him he had 6 months to live, he would make that call to the doctor. "You SOB." I don't know what he liked about SOB. Well, same old Bob. But anyway, so he did that every anniversary until his doctor passed away, and then he said, "Well, I'm glad that's off my back. We don't have to do that anymore." But let me tell you a little bit, one little story about Bob's interaction with me. I had an office downtown Denver, and he had one in the tech center. I got a call from Michelle, who was the receptionist at his office, and she was crying, and she said, "Bob would come up and put his fist down on the reception desk, and his one of his famous things was, 'Look at me with both ears.'" And she said, then he commenced to be upset about something, and I said, "Well, Michelle, he's really a puppy inside." So I said, "When that occurs next time, just reach up and grab his tie and give it a yank and say, 'Get a grip.'" And I said, "I promise you won't get fired." I said, "But I bet he will turn around and scratch his head and go back to work." And I don't know that it happened, but maybe Judy, you were out there, maybe it did. Let me tell you about his cars. Bob had cars that weren't classic cars in the collector's sense necessarily. They were cars. And the first car that Bob bought was Jack Shapiro's Lincoln hardtop convertible. And it had suicide doors in the back. And we were officing at a building in the tech center where the ceilings in the garage were acoustical ceilings, and they were kind of low. And Bob said, "Watch how this retractable roof works." And so the trunk comes open, and then the roof starts coming up, bang, right into the acoustical ceiling. And so here it is, it's stuck in the ceiling, it's got about 4 tiles torn out. And so we said, well, maybe we figured out that it has to go all the way into the trunk before it'll come back out. And so we thought, well, let's let the air out of the tires. So we let the air out of the tires, and it just went up another 4 inches.
Oh, no.
Still stuck in the ceiling, tore out a few more ceiling tiles, and I said, well, that was rocket science. I said, I'm headed back downtown. But, and then his last car was this limousine. And we used to have breakfast on Lincoln Avenue at this little breakfast place. And he said, I bought this limousine. And so I was there. So we went out to look at it. And sure enough, the back tire was in the planter in the parking lot where he turned in and just ran over the planter. And the back tire is still sitting there by the tree. I'm thinking, well, you haven't learned to park this limousine, have you? And then when he moved down to Heritage Eagle Bend, well, the car stuck out of the garage onto the sidewalk, and so I think the association made him get rid of it. But it wasn't a limousine in the classical sense. It had a bench seat in front and a bench seat in back, and enough room between the two to put a pool table in there. And so I'm thinking, well, how are you going to unload this? And he said, well, I got a good price for it. You know. But so his car things were pretty funny. One more brief story, and then I'll. Every summer, we would drive to have a picnic for our employees. And so I said, they have this thing called an alpine slide up at Winter Park. And I said, let's go up there and check it out. So we got in, I think it was Doe's mother's vaudeville. And we go up there to Winter Park. And so we get up to the top, and I said, okay, Settlage, I don't want your slacking butt slowing me down in this track. So I'm going to give you a little go. And if you've ever ridden an alpine slide, you just sit there. You don't try to guide it. And it's in this fiberglass trough. And so I'm about a corner behind Bob. All of a sudden, I see him fly up in the air and slam down in the trough. And then, if anybody knows what fiberglass does to you, I mean, it gives you road rash worse than falling off a bicycle. And so here Bob is in these shorts. He's got road rash all the way down his leg, on his arm. His glasses are gone. His teeth are flopping around. And so we call the first aid people, and they come up and get him, take him down. And so we're up there looking for his teeth, looking for his glasses, looking for his hat. And then, as he tells the story, I pushed him. Well, I didn't push him, but I never saw Bob turn down a challenge. I think when he retired, after he retired, I think he went and bungee jumped in Australia and rappelled down a building. And Bob just had that love for life that I hope I have when I'm his age. So, look, Bob. Right.
When my mom and sister and I went to Germany in Cologne, I saw my first guy doing these giant bubbles in the courtyard there by the cathedral. And I was mesmerized. And then I saw him again in Central Park, and I thought, man, that is so amazing. I'm going to learn how to do that. And so I ended up doing that. And then Louis, he knew Bob, and so he would go and visit Bob, and he would tell my mom that Bob said hi. And she was like, I need to meet this Bob. So she went to go meet Bob, and of course he's so charming. And then she told me about him, and I was like, oh, I've always wanted to, work in a nursing home, and I just love the elderly, and I thought, would they like bubbles? I'll come and do bubbles for him. And so she goes, I don't know, let me ask him. And she calls, she goes, he is so excited. He's got the gal that does the social stuff, putting flyers everywhere. So I thought, oh, how sweet. So we arranged a day last August, and my twin sister was here, and we just did these giant bubbles, and it was so neat to see the child. It brings out the child of everybody, from little kids up to, 90 years old. And it's just a very interesting ministry that God kind of just plugged into my lap, and I had no idea where it would lead me, but it has been the open door for meeting Bob, and we just, you have the greatest dad. He was just so full of life, as you said, and spunky, and he would make you laugh all the time. He should have been in comedy. He really should have. And so I would just, tape little vignettes of him, and then I introduced him to Ray across the hall, and those two became buddies. And here Ray is a World War II veteran. He actually flew B-52 or B-17s, and he would go and pick up POWs from Germany and bring them back. And he did like 50 commercials and 8 movies, and it was like, wow, these elderly people have so much in them, and we don't even let them talk, So it was neat. Those two became like the grumpy old men together, and you'll see some video footage of that. He really, really was interested when my husband George, in fact, before I even met George, I had told him, I said, one night I went in and I said, Bob, I think I met the one, that man of God that I was talking about. And he later got to meet George, and George is building solar electric airplanes and UAVs, and Bob was just fascinated with that. He's got a pilot son and is into aviation, and so he would want to know what's happening with it all the time. And so after that, it's like he did have a will to not live when I first met him. He didn't want me praying for him or anything. No, I just want to go home. And after I met George, it was kind of like, I'm going to ask the Lord if I can have more time. I want to see this plane fly. And so it was so sad that we were at Oshkosh, which is the world's largest aviation show. 10,000 planes fly in, they camp under their wings. It's the strangest thing. And we were up there, and he had a stroke while we had gone up there. But I still wanted to see him one more time. And so I was just like, oh, just wait one more day. And we were coming back on the 29th. When I got the call from Mom, I just broke down. But we just love you, Bob. We know you're looking from the pearl in heaven. You're watching, and you are so pleased with all of your friends and family. And we all love you. Thanks for sharing your life with us.
From day will be your rest. May the Lord bless and keep you. May His grace and His face shine upon you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. 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 And give you peace.